that is the end of that presentation. Hopefully this works. Cool. I captured you all here a little over an hour. I'm glad you're still with me. Hopefully that was informative. I will take a few questions if there are any questions at this time. Andrew says, let me ask you a question. What's my opinion on the concept of modernizing steam locomotives with eco-friendly parts, replacing with... Yeah, I mean, there's that big movement, like for high-speed rails. I don't think you're specifically talking about high-speed rails, but yeah, I think trains themselves. I mean, if we're thinking about the big what-if questions, I think we need to be thinking about how do we make trains a little bit more eco-friendly. And when we do that, what does that mean to make those trains more efficient and effective for transportation or for whatever means necessary? But yeah, I think modernizing steam locomotives is the way to go. And I think there are other folks than myself who can probably speak more to that question that you have and everything. But I think we can.
Yeah, I couldn't help but jump in again. I grew up in a county of 5,000, so this is an issue near and dear to me. But even outside the question of steam trains, these small towns all used to have train stations.
Yeah.
Before car culture became the mainstream, all of these. One of my friends' fathers actually owns his town's old train station. They were going to tear it down, and he said, if I move it to my property, can I have it? And they said yes, and it's a wood shop on his property. And this is a town of maybe 800 max, and they had a train station, and a lot of the trains still run through these towns. The tracks are there, and so a big part of kind of greening transportation, steam or electric or however it does, is regional light rail. And when you get regional light rail into these kind of epicenters that you can then connect to bus to more rural communities, right? So like where I grew up, you could have regional light rail that connects into where I live now, that has a population of 110,000 and an Amtrak station, right? It can connect to my hometown of 2,300, and there can be buses that go multiple times a day to the 200 and the 800 population towns. And that's how we can really start having this kind of stuff. And then that provides access to services. That provides easy public transit access to services. So I think this is a really important issue in terms of something we can focus on. The farmers would love this. It means people, maybe they can get trains to stop again. And it can help for movement, help us to, adapt. And it can also help bring industry back and manufacturing back to these rural communities, which it's been devastated. We had a candidate run in 2018 in Southern Illinois, Randy Yorkshire, for Congress, and he made regional light rail his key central thing. He had a company from Canada that did hydrogen. There was an old train factory in District that he wanted to repurpose with that company into making hydrogen trains, and they wanted to basically reactivate the old regional light rail that ran through. It's a huge issue for rural communities.
Other Andrew says, how do you suggest progressive ideas to lifelong conservatives in these areas in a way that you don't scare them off? I think I'm going to separate this and I'm going to respond to this in, two responses. The first one is I think we really need to be thinking about what do we mean by conservative at this point. Because the conservatives that we have now, unless I'm proven otherwise, are not going to listen. We're dealing with conservatives who are really making a cultural shift in Republican Party right now, and in some ways, the Libertarian Party too. To be quite honest, in my view, you have these folks who don't think of the party; they think of themselves, and so you're not going to change their minds at all now. So that's my first response. The second response is the other kind of conservatives, which are the ones that our parents and probably grandparents are more used to. Your Reaganites, your William Buckleyites, those kind of conservatives back in the 50s. Some of them are still staunch in their ways, and I know some of them also, and they're very staunch. But to your question, Andrew, you do need to have that conversation with them, and it's going to be not just one, not two. It's going to be many conversations, and you just really need to get through those issues with them and actually talk to them about that stuff. We're not going to sell them on socialist ideas. We're just not. But that said, I think we can sell them on certain ideas. Yeah, if you go to like Hawkins.us and some of the platform planks on there, there's some of those ideas that we can really sell them on there. One of them, and I think it's still on the website, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, when we talk about a guaranteed income tax, I mean, that we can sell them something on that because that is something that Thomas Friedman did talk about. And a lot of folks we're okay with that. So something like a guaranteed income tax, we can sell them on that. We may not sell them on community control healthcare, but I think we can get them there if we show them how it's done right. And actually show them an example of what's going on and everything. So hopefully that answers your question, Andrew, because we have to understand what conservatives we're talking about, because the ones we're talking about now, you might as well talk to this wall right here, quite honestly.
So something cool is happening, and Andrew, I'm in Springfield. I literally have a partially written email to you, Andrew signed up through our Green Socialist website. Happened to be located 20 minutes away from me.
Nice.
So good news is you're not alone, right? And that's something I think that progressives and socialists in rural areas need to understand. You're not alone. There is a silent, minority out there that thinks like you do. My county of 5,000 would get, a couple hundred votes for Greens, 100, 200 votes for Greens every election. That's a group of people, right, that are going out of their way to make a different choice. So when we're talking about real deep red rural places, not so much suburbs, right, but actually deep red rural. I mean, my big question is, are they actually conservatives? Are they the only thing that's available to them, right? The Democrats have abandoned them. They're being social issue baited by, Republicans. They're getting riled up about things that they know that don't affect their everyday lives. They're becoming, these, family values voters. But the reality is, the rural areas of this country have been devastated, right? Manufacturing is gone. We just talked about trains. The transportation infrastructure is gone. Small farmers are losing their farms to giant corporations and mega farms. Monocrop, agriculture, chemical agriculture has not been good on the rural community unless they're a medium to large farmer. So, much like urban working class communities, the huge working class base of rural communities has been abandoned by both parties. They're not happy with the Republican policies in many cases, and they're not paying attention to the actual economic policies that impact their lives because they're being riled up on and really baited with religion and things like that. But I don't think that's not overcomable. AJ talked about Methodists and how they went. The big thing that the Methodists did was the Methodists went where there wasn't as much competition. And here's the thing that we need to think about as Greens and about as independent socialists. We have a hard time in a lot of cities because it's hard to find our space because there's always a large, massive, powerful Democratic establishment that can keep us out. There's left Democratic front groups like DSA, PDA that start pulling in, people adjacent to us into the Democratic Party, or at least into its, orbit. And now we're oftentimes Greens find themselves to the left or to the right of parts of things like DSA in these cities, right? So Greens have a really hard time establishing a foothold. And I could do a whole workshop and articles on, how we've spent 35 years and never defined ourselves. And that's a big part of the problem. But we're having a hard time there. Like the Methodists who couldn't, if you're in the city and you're fighting all of these other established, major religions, it's going to be hard to get your foothold. So they went where there wasn't competition. They went to the rural communities. And as someone who grew up in a Methodist, I'm not religious anymore, but someone who grew up in a Methodist church in a rural community, I can say it was a pretty liberal place. In comparison to the politics of the people that went there, the things that they espoused in church were very liberal compared to the things they espoused in a political situation. And a lot of it is, getting riled up by, Republican conservatism. But it hasn't helped them. So, and the idea, AJ said we can't sell them on Medicare for all. We have something like 52 or 54% of all polled voters support it. So we've already won them. Mm-hmm. Right? They won it. They're uninsured, and the nearest health clinic is, a half an hour to hours away. I live 6 blocks from 2 hospitals and a regional medical center that serves all of central Illinois, probably 24 counties. You have to drive 2 hours if you need anything other than, basic medical care, a checkup, a pharmacy. And so they would, these rural communities, if you can build the relationships that allow you to have long-term conversations and actually get through to people, because yelling at someone on the internet doesn't get through, right? You have to know someone, you have to talk to them, you have to build a relationship. What you'll find out is they would love a national health service, right, where publicly, democratically, locally controlled, health clinics would open up in these small towns where they would get direct act. They wouldn't have to go half an hour to get to my town of 2,300. Mm-hmm. Right, to get basic medical care. So they could get it in their hometown and they wouldn't have to travel 2 hours unless something was really serious. Right, we could actually start giving access to people on things like that. So when you're organizing a rural community, you tone switch, right? You talk about issues differently, but the same issues affect us all. Economic inequality, corporatism, actually absolutely taking over everything is a big issue in rural communities. It's why they don't have jobs anymore. Outsourcing is why they don't have jobs anymore. Consolidation and big farms buying them up is why they don't have jobs anymore. These progressive issues are very, very popular. And they are, farmers are worried about climate. The people they elect that rile them up and get them voted on abortion may not be, but farmers are worried about climate. Right? They know, they understand what happens if their soil changes even a little bit. So we've just got to, it's all about, like in any kind of organizing, it's all about building those relationships, building those roots. Like AJ said, show up, be reliable, do some things. People will start listening.